a certain variable. You can't measure absolutely everything in a study, unless, of course, you're doing a master's thesis, sure, someone's behest. But no, there's a point to draw the line. Robert, however, had the dogged idea that in addition to looking for a disparity between how you look and what your ideal is, which really hasn't been what research has used as the measure of dissatisfaction, might be a lot heavier than you'd like to be. Robert insisted through all my protestations that he was going to also ask them on a 10-point scale, how much does this bother you? How dissatisfied are you? And found some really interesting results. So, Robert, Devitz, you finish something?
My name is Robert D. Witz, and my study that I conducted was on gender differences in body satisfaction and motivation. And I based my study off of previously conducted research in this area. There was a plethora of previously conducted research based on gender differences and body satisfaction. The scale that I use, which is the one you see in front of you now, has been used in numerous research studies pertaining to gender differences in body satisfaction. Some of the things that I saw in previously conducted research had to do with satisfaction as well as actual versus ideal and the deviations from it. Some things that I expected to see based on what I had read up on previously conducted research was that men were going to be more satisfied than women. Also, women tend to have a one-way shift in regards to what their actual body image is and what they idealize it to be. In other words, for example, a woman who scores herself as a 5 may shift to the left, but it's very uncommon for women to desire to shift to the right. In males, however, it's often seen as a two-way shift. Men who find themselves as 1, 2, or 3 desire to be slightly larger, and men who are on the right side of the scale find themselves wanting to be somewhat smaller. Much like the professor has said, I was not satisfied with the measure of body satisfaction that I had seen in previously conducted research. Their measure of dissatisfaction was measured by a deviation for between actual and ideal. In other words, the way they measured dissatisfaction was they would take the value that they would score for their ideal. So if men said that they idealized a 5, and they were actually an 8, I would subtract 5 from 8, and the result would be the score of dissatisfaction. I, however, did not see that as an accurate measure of intensity. I was under the impression, and to my understanding, that in order to measure intensity, I would have to be direct. I would have to ask the participants directly how satisfied they are. In other words, someone a woman who may score themselves as a 5 may want to be a 4, but they may lose a lot of sleep over it, if you know what I mean. Like, they may be incredibly dissatisfied and only have one shift, over on what they ideally want to be. Whereas a 4 may want to be a 2, but it's something that, it's not too important to them, and they're not very satisfied. And I did see cases of that in my data as I analyzed it. Let's see here. So I constructed my own survey. Consisted of 9 questions in total, 9 questions in total. 7 questions in total, and each question fell on a 9-point spectrum. The first question was a direct question on measuring body satisfaction, and I asked both men and women on a scale from 1 to 10 how satisfied they were with their current body image. The second question was me asking them to rate their current body figure, and they had to choose one of 9 values on the scale. The third question being what they ideally wanted to be, what was their ideal body figure. Fourth question being what they thought the opposite sex finds most attractive. Fifth question being what they actually find the opposite sex to be most attractive. And the final 2 questions that I asked had to do with motivation. And my theory is that there was going to be a significant gender difference in motivation. in regards to what was more important. Participation in fitness level classes for sexual attractiveness, for maintaining or developing that, or for health-related issues. And there was 2 questions for each. So one was a 9-point value scale, and measuring how important it was for that gender to participate in fitness class for sexual attractiveness, and the second question being, that for health-related issues. It was my theory that it was going to be more important for men to develop physical attractiveness, and that it would be more important for women to develop some kind of physical well-being. I also theorized that those with lower satisfaction were going to desire sexual attractiveness more than those who were satisfied. And the way I collected data was I went to physical education courses offered here on campus. Some of the courses that I went to were body conditioning and fitness, boxing, combative arts and self-defense, walking for fitness, weight training, and yoga for health and fitness. And it was approximately 12 classes total that I went to. My total sample size was 173 participants. The way data was collected, it was collected in clusters. I would go to a class and I spoke with the instructor of that class. And I asked the students in the class whether they were willing to participate or not. And those that did, I issued surveys. And I briefly explained to them what the topic of my study was, which was body differences in gender. And I didn't get too detailed into what I was studying, but I did mention what the actual study was on. Once the students or the participants were finished with their surveys, they were instructed to fold them up and drop them in a box to protect their anonymity. Once I collected all my data, I split up the participants into 4 different groups. The first set of groups were based on gender, obviously. I had a total of 88 men and a total of 85 women. I also split up the participants according to satisfaction, ignoring gender. And what I found was a total of 18 who scored low and a total of 77 who scored high. The way that I grouped those groups was based on the 9-point survey. If they scored between 1 and 3, they were considered low satisfaction, and if they scored between 7 and 9, they were considered high. All other scores were disregarded. I conducted a total of 13 t-tests. 4 groups, and as you can see, for the means in regards to gender, these are the 8 different values that I had between genders. And what I found was that men experience more satisfaction than women. Men are depicted as blue on the scale, while women are depicted as red. When it came to actual versus ideal, men were experienced almost no deviation on average from their ideal, whereas women were quite high on their deviation. I also found that men were also much closer to what they thought women found attractive, the same being for women. Sorry, not the same for being women, but women found a similar deviation as they did from their ideal. Even more interesting is the fact that men's ideal of physical attractiveness, like what they want their body to be, matches almost exactly what they think women most idealize. And the same is true for women. Women's ideal matches what they think men want them to be. And this column right here depicts what each gender finds most attractive. Men found on average that they find women to be most attractive on a value of 3.8, whereas women it was a value of 3.58. And if we look back to the scale, both genders find almost the exact same value most attractive. And what I also found was that while men find women to be most attractive here, women think men want the women to look somewhere around this right here. So it's much smaller to the left. Whereas men shift to the right. They believe that women want them to be larger. And this may explain why women find themselves being more dissatisfied with their current body image because they find themselves so far away from their ideal. So the ideal for women is on the far left of the spectrum, whereas men, their ideal falls somewhere in the middle. So men who find themselves being, a 6 or a 9 or somewhere on the right side of the spectrum in regards to what they currently look like have to shift to the middle, and men who find themselves on the left side of the spectrum also want to shift to the middle. And this was seen in previously conducted research. That two-way shift, this is something I expected to find. However, I did not expect to find it so frequently. I did not expect to see that happen. And so women tend to have to shift further on average to their ideal, when men have to shift towards the middle. And this, like I said, could explain why they experience more dissatisfaction. And back to my t-test, you can see that I failed to reject the null in nearly every case, the only cases being what each opposite gender finds attractive. In other words, both genders are attracted to the same thing in regards to a numerical value on that scale. Also, my hypothesis, according to motive, what each gender would find more important, there was no significant gender difference. I had to accept the null for both those two cases. So both men and women if you look at the mean, which is the average of scores, for men it's a 6.9, whereas women it's a 6.98, so the values are almost identical. So I had to accept the null. So there was no significant statistical difference between men and women in regards to sexual attractiveness being motive, which was quite high for both genders. The same is seen for men. There's a slight difference, but no statistical value, as I also had to reject, or I also had to accept the null in that case. As you can see, men average an 8.1, whereas women is an 8.41, being no statistical difference. The same is true for motive. The same is true for motive in the groups that have to do with satisfaction levels. Remember, I split them between low and high satisfied, and there is no difference between the average of scores in either case, and I also had to accept the null. So my original hypothesis, according to motive, that I was going to see some differences in gender in regards to motive, and some differences in motive in regards to satisfaction, did not happen. I did not see that in this case. I did, however, see that those that experienced the highest level of satisfaction found themselves very close to their ideal. As you can see, 0.13 is much less than 1 point deviation away from what their actual is. Whereas those with low satisfaction experience at least 1.5 points average away from their deviation. Originally, when I began conducting this research, I was not too interested in this topic, and nor was I interested in the process of statistical analysis and research. But I found that this to be quite interesting, and very excited with the results that I found. And I want to thank you guys for listening to what I had to say, and that is all.